schools here with us in Joseph Secondary, presentation Shogunas, Waterloo Secondary, and Holy Name Convent. So to the students, let's give the students a little welcome. Spread the message, students. I mean, we remember we were just like you a couple of years ago in uniform, full of ambition and potential, and clearly you all have an interest in this field, hence the reason your teachers and your school would have sent you to be part of this, our CANTO Connect. So, we are ready. Giving folks just about a minute again to get to the respective seats while we prepare for our next session. While everyone makes their way to their place, let me again remind you that later on this evening, compliments Liberty Caribbean, we're having ourselves our Monday night networking event. It's going to be tremendous. It's music. It's for those who went to the conference last year in Bahamas. You know Liberty, you know they do it. We had a great mixer there. The memories are still fresh in my mind, and we're going to obviously give that same energy Trinbago style later on this evening. So for those who might want to go, freshen up, change up, make sure, be part of it. Entry, just a big bright smile once you're part of the conference, and the part of the Connect. And we'll have a time later on with our mixer. That's from 6:30 downstairs, waterfront. With no delay, let's get into our next speaker. Excellent. So information here is at hand, and I want us to get ready for another keynote, a very important delivery. I think everybody is in place, so we are good to go again. The theme for this keynote, From the Caribbean to the World, How Secure Hybrid Work Drives Global Competitiveness. And to lead us in that regard, let's give a warm CANTO Connect welcome to the Sales Territory Manager for Citrix Latam, Fabio Shari. He will join us now for his keynote. Let's give a warm welcome to Fabio.
Can I have the slides, please? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Citrix Latam is honored to participate in CANTO Connect for the first time as a gold partner in the context of global competitiveness. We are Citrix in Latin America. By the way, it's my first time in Trinidad. We come from Colombia, so I already had the chance to taste the doubles, delicious. And go try it if you want, if you haven't until now. Okay. This partnership is a testament to our unwavering commitment to enhancing connectivity and facilitating the next phase of digital transformation, the applications that lies upon it. So we've been here hearing some of the speakers talking about what's next and what will be the drive to those efforts that during the past years the government, the institutions, the providers have been doing it to connect the whole region. And that will make sense if the application that comes upon it will provide us a better user experience and will give us competitive to the world. So this partnership on better connectivity layers holds an immense potential to transform lives, families, and the overall well-being of communities. However, as this transformative technology becomes increasingly adopted, it will also present new challenges for individuals and organizations accustomed to traditional work, business, and educational practices. These challenges stems for the inherent risk associated to the adoption of new technologies. That's why Citrix is the leading That's why Citrix is the leading app delivery platform for secure hybrid work. So let's take a moment to think about what are the needs when you are in front of your computer at the office, at the school, everything that comes together. Work is done when the user, the person, gets the right tools in the right moment and feels the right experience to get the job done. That's what Citrix come in. So what are the challenges that organizations are facing today? Our host just mentioned the new generations that jumps into the workforce. This kind of new generation of workforce demands new ways to do the work. They are mostly remote works. They like a little bit of flexibility. And that will give us competitiveness if we can meet those challenges to provide that kind of tools to the users. But also, this kind of the diverse work styles has complex operations to support, to provide a new way of doing the work. So the IT teams and in general, the organization may face challenges according to what are the correct investments that they need to do in order to understand how to deliver that kind of services working properly. And manage the availability to provide access to applications from anywhere and from any device. Most of you, I've been watching you, are working, in the meantime, you are answering some emails, maybe attending some calls, and maybe doing some of your current work because you are taking the time to be here, but also the work keeps going. So that kind of stuff, you need a platform to allow you to do the best way possible without adding extra complexity or going against the user performance if you try to deliver more secure ways to do the work. So some of you may face this scenario. There are a lot of acronyms. Those who work in IT understand most of it, but the others no. It is a mess. It is complexity. It gives you headaches. It takes time from your weekends to set everything smoothly. But nowadays, for people to work, innovate, and be productive needs the right tools at the right moment, and for the people who support this kind of work needs to solve this maze, right? So there is what Citrix comes to the stage, because we allow you to provide a single platform that will help you to deliver the right tools in a seamless way to be productive and to get the things done. And this will allow you, to your organizations, to create a better user experiences and improve the IT efficiency at cost, put the money where it matters most. Every single dollar that you invest in this kind of tools should impact the purpose of the organization. If it is a non-profit organization, to get coverage of the users, for instance, in the government, or if you are a retail trying to get more new customers, allows you to improve the experience and give the tools needed for you, because that's the way you can solve the cost issue that everyone of here who face this kind of conversation maybe at the beginning when they are building a budget for the next year. That's where we allow you to help sustain your investments, impacting the purpose of your organizations, while keeping everything secure. Most of our solutions, and nowadays solutions, when you try to secure your environment, when you try to secure your applications, goes against the performance or go against the user experience. So it shouldn't be that way. It should be a side-by-side conversation, because as you deliver a more secure environment, you also should provide a better user experience. So in that way is where the people start to be productive, where the people where innovations appear, where the people are able to to do more with less. So that's where Citrix relies, and that's what we're asking you to consider for you, trying to understand how are your applications in this moment being delivered, who are your main users, what are they doing and how we can solve some of this performance without setting apart the security issues. Staying responsive to change. All the people here, suddenly 6 years ago, from one day to another, has to figure out how to continue operations because something that was under nobody's control appears. So the ability to be resilient is what matters most today, and adapt what the demands of the market or their services demands today. So in that case, to elevate the region from connectivity to competitiveness, you need a platform that empowers resilient growth and global scale, prioritizing resilience, enabling innovation, and ensuring security. But how exactly does Swiftly has to do with it? Basically, we are the best platform to the delivery application, to reduce the delivery application complexity, acceleration cloud transformation, adopting some of the solutions that the people who are outside, the local sponsors, etc., are trying to understand how we can leverage all of those capabilities that are there for you. How can we leverage that kind of tools in a better way? So we help you accelerating the cloud transformation, adopting some of services in the cloud, or maybe in a hybrid way, and you need a solution that is flexible enough to adapt what are the needs of the companies, are the organizations today, without going against the performance and strengthening security and compliance, consolidating vendors and the skill sets. Yesterday, in the main keynote, someone speaks about the need for reinforce the skills for the people or the young generations that bring into the space or to the workforce today. So this kind of skill sets that I understand will be a policy government trying to get incorporate more new talented users into the workforce, will find in our solution a better way to do the job. And of course, unifying experience. So in this case, we provide a complete and a holistic platform, a framework that comes together different tools, and among them, in a seamless way, it's possible for you to understand what are the key applications for you to deliver to the users or your customers. How is the best way to ensure that they experience the best way they can do, be productive, and integrating this kind of tools, each of one into the other, will have a whole 360 experience in the delivery application platform. So I highly encourage you to start your journey to global competitiveness today. Step by our booth outside this room, and let's start a discussion with our experts. If we know what kind of applications are important, the most important for you, we will be able to suggest different kind of solutions for you to deliver that application in a secure way and assure a complete user experience. So thanks for having me, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you so much. Thank you again to Fabio, and yet again, another first-timer to the Twin Island state of Trinidad and Tobago. So great to have you, Fabio. Spread the word, and thank you so much for your expertise. And of course, as you mentioned, lots happening outside later when we ultimately take that break for lunch. Make sure and embrace all our exhibitors. What we want to do now is get into another important conversation stage side, and the theme we're going to treat with cyber security. Very important conversation, and we're going to treat with the framework for public telecommunications and broadcasting facilities. To lead us in that regard, we welcome again the Deputy CEO, the Trinidad and Tobago Telecommunications authority there, TAT, as they're going to treat with that particular conversation. So let's give a warm CANTO Connect welcome to Kirk Sukram, Deputy CEO of TAT, to treat with that on stage.
Thank you, Masters of Ceremony. And good morning, everyone. As it's mid-morning, allow me the privilege to say all protocols and salutations having been observed. And of course, thank you to CANTO for having a regulator on its panel. You would have heard from my CEO, Curly Prescott, this morning. And now I'm here to present on cybersecurity for the telecommunications networks and broadcasting facilities. So I think first off, and full disclosure, TAT is not responsible for national cybersecurity, right? That is the remit of the ministry, well, our Ministry of Homeland Security, in tandem with my line ministry, Ministry of Public Administrations and Artificial Intelligence. You have agencies like the TTC CERT, who has a responsibility in terms of the response side. You have agencies like our friends at iGovTT, who has responsibility when it comes to implementation of cybersecurity throughout government. However, that sees it important as a sector regulator to look at our sector, the telecommunication and broadcasting sector, and similar to the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, which developed guidelines for cybersecurity for its sector, the financial sector. We see it important to do the same for our sector, more so having looked at what the times have brought to us in the last 3 to 5 years, both globally and nationally. So moving forward into the presentation, and I presume, yes, so in terms of the outline, just a reminder on TAT's mandate, particularly as it relates to cybersecurity, because it's important to get that connection. And then the approach we took in terms of developing this framework that presents measures that for the industry to consider when it comes to implementation of cybersecurity best practices, highlighting some of those key cybersecurity measures that came about that featured heavily in the discussions that we had when we did consultations on the framework. And then, of course, knowing that this is not the end, this is just the start of what we as an industry need to do to protect consumers, to protect the national population at large. We want to focus on some of the highlights of what we want to do moving forward. Right, so moving forward into the presentation, looking at TAT's mandate now. So the Telecom Authority has been around for just over 20 years. As a regulator, some may say still young in the industry, but not so when it comes to what we've done in terms of developing the telecommunication and broadcasting sector here in Trinidad and Tobago. And this is yet another area that we see important for us to have a conversation in with the industry, with all key stakeholders, when it comes to ensuring that we meet our mandate, our expected mandate, based on our legislation. Moving forward. So when we look at the objects of our act, yes, we have to encourage telecommunications investment, create an open telecom market, ensure orderly development of the telecommunications sector, facilitate universal access, to telecommunications, and of course, regulating broadcasting services. But what is key for us, particularly when it comes to cybersecurity, is to protect and promote the public interest. And for this, we see it important to have had that conversation with the industry, with key stakeholders, and of course, to continue it as we move forward, taking our framework into a state of implementation. This may be a little difficult to see on the slide, but of course, I'm sure when you get a copy of the deck, you'll be able to internalize it. But these are aspects of our current legislation that, for us, signals the need to have a role when it comes to cybersecurity. First of which is in our objects, promoting and protecting the interests of the public by providing the protection of consumers. Section 18, which essentially spells out our functions, our powers, to establish national telecommunication industry standards and technical standards. When we look at the instruments, the terms and conditions of the instruments of authorization, the concession, what we have in our legislation as it comes to what it would need to contain is to ensure that the concessionaire, the operators essentially, refrain from using and maintain the confidentiality of any confidential, personal, and proprietary information of any user, other operator of another network, or other service provider. So as we would have heard on earlier this morning in terms of data sovereignty and the need to protect that information, it lends itself into the area of cybersecurity, into one of the areas we need to focus on as a regulator. And of course, in Section 32, which deals with terminal equipment, for such equipment to be safe for the users. So looking at our approach for developing the framework, and for this, we didn't just go do some research, get some advice from some experts, prepare a document, and just approved it and put it forward for the industry. This was a very much collaborative approach. Even before the document was a document to talk about, a consultative document, we had industry consultations, not just with the operators, but also those others in the cybersecurity ecosystem, so like the TTC CERT, our line ministry, iGov TT as well, to ensure that what we put out there was not just relevant to what is needed today, but appropriate for us as a regulator to have. So when we looked at the current state, some key considerations made, and it's reflected in the document. And by the way, this document, this framework was published Friday last, so it's there for those who wish to delve into the details afterwards. But some key considerations: growing emphasis on cybersecurity as part of our national digital transformation agenda. And I'm sure everyone in the room would agree with me on this. Increasing prevalence of cyber incidents, and that's evident to see. And of course, for us, the need for consistent industry-wide adoption of measures by UD operators and in order to protect consumers. So when we looked at a framework that was appropriate for our sector, what we needed to consider from a purpose standpoint, the goal was to establish measures that are recommended, or some may have to be adopted as a matter of obligation for concessionaires, to ensure that the measures that we put in are applicable to our operators under our remit, so both the telecom operators as well as the broadcasting facilities. And of course, our main goal to protect consumers and their information from cyber attacks. So when we looked at the scope of the document, to keep it relevant to our sector, we looked at the scope needing to be developed based on the existing regulatory framework for the telecommunication and broadcasting sectors to protect the interests of the public. The framework applies to public telecom networks that are based on IP to provide connectivity to the internet, so we're talking the internet service providers in the main. And one thing to note in terms of the scope of this framework, it does not apply to security approaches to be adopted by end users, whether individuals or businesses, to protect their networks and or services. So really focusing on what consistently as operators need to be done, and what we'll need to ensure need to be done consistently so that consumers are protected. So a little bit highlight in terms of the process, because as I said, this was a collaborative approach used, starting with an industry pre-consultation that included other key stakeholders in the cybersecurity space. Then, of course, the appropriate research. And for this, we took guidance from global entities like the International Telecommunication Union, as well as looking a little closer into the region, agencies from the US as well, in terms of what they have done, recognizing that our internet traffic primarily goes through the US out into the world. And then with that, we were able to prepare our first consultative document. We went through 2 rounds of public consultation, whereby we put out the document, got comments and recommendations in, revised the document accordingly based on those comments and recommendations, and then sent it out for a second round, not just with a revised document, but our responses to the comments and recommendations received, so there would be full transparency in terms of not just our thought process, but how the document would have been modified, revised over the whole consultation process. And for those of you who would have followed it and be part of it would see that there were some key changes, significant changes in terms of the ensuring that the document is not just reasonable, but implementable at the end of the day. And this is what brings us to where we are now, where after all this consultation, we have a document to put out to the industry to consider and start that process of ensuring that level of cybersecurity required to protect our consumers. So there's some highlights of the consultation process. We started back in October 2024 with your first round of public consultation. Thankfully, and I need to take a moment to thank the industry for its participation in this process, not just in the pre-consultation, but as you can see there, some of the major players participated in the comments, as well as we had some industry experts. Their names are there, and I don't think they need any further recognition than that, because they should be known to all. But essentially, we got good feedback from the industry, from all key stakeholders during this process, and allowed us to put forward what we believe is a workable framework with measures that can act as guidelines and measures that we may need to ensure that are adopted consistently throughout the industry to ensure that we all achieve what we believe is a shared goal that we all have, which is to protect consumers. So looking now at some of these cybersecurity measures. Now, you would hear me say that not all the measures are required measures. So we have two classes of measures represented in this framework. We have, yes, the required ones, the ones that we believe should be the baseline, that we, during the consultation, trust. And we got, I would say, adequate feedback from the consultation to be confident enough in that what we have there is required, are actually achievable by the industry. And then, of course, there are the recommended recommended measures, the ones that we want the industry to aspire to ensure that we reach that level of cybersecurity resilience that we believe we need to have from a national perspective. And all in all, it's just 27 measures, majority of which are recommended measures, right? So what we look at there is ensuring that we're reasonable for the industry in terms of our approach, and not just what we identify as measures to be considered by the industry, but how we would like the industry to consider those measures as well. Diving a little deeper in terms of the areas of focus, because we try to keep this specific to our sector. So of course, protection of critical network infrastructure is the big one. Network security monitoring and detection, all these are things we know you as the industry currently do. For us, we just want to ensure that it's done consistently. Right? Responsible use and delivery of messaging services, user and network interconnection, incident response capability and preparation, development and maintenance of cybersecurity plans, reporting of cyber incidents. And this is where we see ourselves as a conduit, or more or less a liaison, of aggregating cybersecurity incidents for our sector and ensuring that the TCC cert is aware of and able to guide us, not just the regulator, but also the sector when it comes to treatment of these issues, as it may be prevalent not just within our sector alone, but other sectors as well. Supply chain and vendor management is also an important issue to look at. Subscriber privacy and data protection, cybersecurity awareness, education and training, and of course, monitoring and conformance. Right? This is essentially a monitoring and evaluation aspect of how we need to ensure that what we put forward is implemented and implementable. So looking into some of the key recommended measures, and this essentially what we've pulled out is basically what was topical as we went through our public consultation, and even some were topical in the pre-consultation phase as well. So we felt it important to have it identified here, and of course, persons could get into the details because we essentially have it paraphrased for easier consumption here at this session. But of course, as a first recommended measure, and for us, our preference is to also start with that baseline, that standard that we should aspire to. And for that, the industry is urged to adopt the ISO 27001 standard on information security management under the controls specified in the ITU-T recommendation X1051. Now, this is essentially a mirror recommendation to the ISO 27011 standard, and that is actually a standard that is currently being considered by the Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards to be identified as a voluntary standard for Trinidad and Tobago. So there's alignment there as well. Another key recommended measure is that operators should securely share validated information amongst operators and incident response organizations. Because we believe once we're able to share relevant information and information that can be validated, this will help us be aware, and that awareness is the first step to actioning to prevent harm to our consumers and also internally to ourselves. We also recommend that operators should ensure that significant vendors and the equipment, software, and systems supplied are secure and are monitored to ensure continued security in accordance with the standards that may be established by the authority. That's the Telecommunication Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. Right, and that's just to ensure that when it comes to a standardization perspective, it's all aligned in terms of what we've established for the industry. Now moving to some of the required measures, and these are the ones that we saw important to focus on because these will have a life after this document in terms of what we want to continue in our conversations, collaborations with the industry as it relates to satisfying these required measures. First one is operators shall be able to respond to threats and attacks they detect through their cybersecurity monitoring programs. And we trust that, are confident that we can put that as a required measure because we know majority of the industry have measures in place, programs in place to do just this. We also indicate that operators shall prepare and submit to the authority their cybersecurity plans, but we're not just holding to that alone or limiting what the operators have to do to just submit their cybersecurity plans. We will also accept suitable independent certification of its existence because we know there's a trust factor that needs to be maintained, and we see it reasonable enough that if there's evidence that your cybersecurity plan is independently certified, that's essentially good enough for us. Another required measure is the operator shall notify the authority within 24 hours of any meaningful cybersecurity incident that occurs. This is to ensure, I would say, timely reporting of meaningful cybersecurity incidents, where we can then aggregate and relay information necessary to report to the other agencies involved in cybersecurity, for example, the TTC CERT. Continue with some required measures. For cybersecurity incidents, operators shall submit an incident report to the authority in 5 days if the incident is resolved within 5 days, or within 7 days if the start of the for incidents that start, or within 7 days of the start of the incident for those that are still unresolved after 5 days. And this is to ensure some consistency in terms of reporting and setting of expectations. And of course, operators shall submit annually level of conformance to cybersecurity measures. This is to ensure that from a monitoring and evaluation standpoint, that we're meeting expectations not just for ourselves, but for those who we serve, which are the consumers. So that more or less highlights the sort of measures that you will find in this cybersecurity framework, right? Recognizing that the majority are not required, the majority are recommended. So for this, we urge the industry to take note of the recommended standards, right? Some may have a glide path longer than others in terms of looking at these measures and actioning some of these measures. But this is where we say this is the start of the conversation, not the end. This is where now we need to work together to collaborate more, to have further conversations, to see how we can make this a reality. So moving forward, what do we see? So of course, there are certain aspects of the framework that needs to be implemented, right? One of which is the submission of either a cybersecurity plan or evidence, certified evidence that one not just exists, but is implemented in the organization, right? So there's some action work for us to initiate there. Also, and this is in tandem with the ecosystem, it's not just the sector that we have to have that conversation with, it's also the TTC CERT, for example. And for this, we are seeking to establish a memorandum of understanding with the TTC cert, which will help us with our reporting, ensuring that the information that is shared amongst parties, information that can be trusted, that information that will, I guess, give that level of confidence to the operators, to the sector, that they are aware of what information is being shared between the authority and the TTC cert, and then vice versa, of course. I would have mentioned the Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards and the approval of that ISO standard. So that will give our work our baseline of what we want to achieve more credence, nationally, of course. And then, of course, we have other activities like the annual conformance reporting that we'll want to ensure that we firm up so that we can implement. And these are just some of the highlights in terms of the next steps as we move forward to not just implement our cybersecurity framework for the sector, but also realize the objectives, the goal that we're trying to achieve. So that brings me to the end of presentation. Thank you very much. And also, let me apologize for not being in the appropriate attire today as I, as I look at the crowd. But thank you.
So some perspective there from the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, the Deputy CEO, Kirk Sukram. 2 more sessions to go. We will go through with the program, and after, when it's all concluded, we go to lunch, and of course, we will take that pause until the network session later on, hosted by Liberty Caribbean. We move on now to a very important conversation. It's to deal with deep fake detection, protecting truth, trust, and digital integrity. To take us through that conversation, let's welcome to the stage Shiva Bisesa, Managing Director of Pinnacle Consulting. So let's give a warm welcome to Shiva Bisesa to take us through that conversation.
Thanks, JW. Welcome, guys. I've noticed there's a lot of people who first time is in Trinidad. So, JW, you take anybody to the Avenue as yet? Not yet. Okay, so that's tonight. Okay, guys. All right, so I'm a magician. All right, I'm going to take a Bollywood star and transform him into a Kung Fu fighter. So, anytime you're ready to show the Bollywood star. All right, so let's proceed with the. So, what is the attack evolution that we're seeing right now? Deepfakes, AI-generated content, it's a threat that is out there right now. And we are seeing it moving. You guys would have seen the videos with Will Smith 2 years ago eating spaghetti, where he looks really contorted and his face is all over the place, to now where we have realistic deepfakes. And this is my Indian Bollywood star here. But don't show the monitors as yet. Here. That's the secret part, right? And the attack evolution is going to be now moving social engineering from your traditional methods of trying to fool people to trying to fool people with more convincing deepfakes. So social engineering is not a technical term. It's something that you do all the time. You come and you meet an audience, you social engineer your way into a room. You had your first date, you social engineer your way into her life or his life. Social engineering is how we convince people to trust us to carry out some action that we want them to carry out. It's not technical. So, but there are techniques that are used in social engineering schemes. And deepfakes is going to take that whole social engineering game to our next level. We have now the advent of attacks that are based on business email compromise. So a business email compromise is where you would see someone pretending to be a vendor. They will send you an email, And they are trying to convince you to click on that email and add them to the vendor list or send a wire to a next different account than what you're normally accustomed paying out to. And that business email compromise is very prevalent in Trinidad and Tobago. We have had instances of, very public instances of these types of attacks, where what emails and WhatsApp messages have been used to perpetrate fraud on even financial institutions. So this is a very real threat right now with existing methods. I haven't started to talk about deepfakes as yet. I talk about emails and WhatsApp. Now, we talked a bit about the ISO 27001 framework and the good work that TAT is doing with respect to cybersecurity. Anybody involved in cybersecurity knows that you don't authorize transactions based on email and WhatsApp messages. You have to go through a process. But this is the game. This is the game. These guys are so good at trying to get you to bypass your existing workflows. This is what they try to do. So they would send you an email, pretend to be a supplier. Hey, click on this link to add us to the list. Click on this link to add us, to send money to a different account. Click on this link to, they would try to get some personal piece of information from you. And all of this is part of that pretext or the social engineering aspect that stages an attack on your environment. Phishing is one of the technical techniques that they use. And again, I would start off by saying social engineering is not a technical term, but it does employ technical mechanisms. Phishing is one of them. You have other types. You have vishing, you have smishing, vishing being voice phishing, and smishing being SMS phishing. And again, these are technical techniques that they execute to try to get you to click on a link. That link is part of a cycle of a set of schemes called DNS abuse, or it belongs to DNS abuse, where they may have the link actually takes you to a different website than what you wanted to click on, or what you were convinced to thinking is associated with that link. So malware, phishing, these are various types of DNS abuse category sessions or instances or techniques employed by attackers to get you to carry about some action to, once you've gained their trust, once the attacker has gained your trust, they want you to carry about these types of actions to further compromise your environment. So you have already been compromised. Your environment may not have been compromised, but this is now where they take you as somebody who has certain privileges within your organization, and they try to get you to click on a link that gives them a foothold into your network, that gives them some piece of information that they could use to exploit vulnerabilities within your network. So that whole concept of the human being a key barrier to entry to some of these attacks is very real. Your human link is often thought of, I don't want to say it derogatively, but the weakest link within or maybe we could say it, the least paid attention to link. Because we tend to think of cybersecurity as expensive firewalls, expensive technical measures, but the human aspect is what gets them that foothold into your environment. So part of the type of cybersecurity audit reports that will be expected of service providers going forward. Have you tested your humans within your environment? Have you trained the humans within your environment to withstand these type of attacks? Do you generate emails that try to convince people, hey, you've won a ticket, click on this link? This will all be part of what is expected of operators going forward to demonstrate that you've shored up your internal human response within your environment. So we ain't talk phishing as yet. These are all things that exist right now. These are all things that people are falling victim to right now. So now we get into the AI-enabled techniques. And what are some of these AI-enabled techniques? we've seen the technical measures that bad actors are trying to perpetrate against the good actors. Where are the good actors? Or their potential victims. The areas that they would exploit would be that pretext script that they have to try to convince somebody that they are someone else. Those scripts will now improve with AI. Let me give you a practical example. Financial sextortion. This is where persons try to prey on teenagers and get them to submit some compromising photo of themselves, and they will use that now as leverage to ask them for money once they've fallen victim to that scheme. These attacks are not perpetrated by individuals. There are groups known for these types of attacks, and they are based in certain regions of the world. Some come from East Africa, some come from Asia. And right now, we are able to tell, based on the types of messages that are being sent to the victims, where the attack is originating from, because there are certain telltale signs you can tell within there as to where the attacks are coming from. So I personally have an experience with one of these attacks, and I could let you know a countdown was used to influence the victim to apply pressure on them. And when you see these messages that come from these attackers, it's a scary thing. Imagine it from the perspective of a teenager. So what is AI going to do? AI is going to enable these guys to clean up their scripts, get rid of the grammatical errors, get rid of the spelling errors. It reduces the possibility now of us being able to decipher where these attacks are coming from, and it enables them to better convince the potential victim of their legitimacy. They gain the trust of the victim, get the victim to share something personal, and then use that as leverage against them. It's the same technique used in in romance scams. And romance scams have been recognized by the FIU-TT as something taking place in Trinidad and Tobago of significance. They have data to support that. They've issued a report, they've issued warnings on that. Whereas the financial sextortion is something that applies to the youth. But this type of extortion, if we look at it from that general word of extortion, it is something that takes place globally, and it has been taking place in Trinidad and Tobago. AI, generative AI, is going to make the bad actors better at creating those scripts. Better voice quality. We have something called AI voice cloning. Anybody know what that is? AI voice cloning? Right. So basically, I'm talking now, I apply a filter, basically an AI filter, and my voice sounds more convincingly like someone else. So imagine you're talking to somebody on the internet, and their voice is coming across as my face, but my voice may be coming across as some beautiful young lady. This is what teenagers may be facing in a financial sextortion attack. AI helps the bad actors to create better voice cloning techniques to be applied live. We're not talking about recorded messages. We're talking about these things can take place live. Deepfakes. So we finally get to where we wanted to go. The flashy one, the one that generating a lot of interest, where you have a face and you basically apply a digital feature over that face, a mask, and you get a different person, a different image. And these are not recorded. These are happening live, and we will demonstrate that shortly. And we need to go back to the attacker's motivations. Deepfake attack did take place in Hong Kong, maybe a couple years ago, where the controller of accounts was on a conference call that he thought was his executives, and they were basically scammed out of, he sent money, he followed the instructions received on that video call, and he sent money to the tune of, I believe, $25 million. So this is not fiction. I'm not making up this. These things are happening. It's real. It's here. It's now. Remember, I started off by saying I'm a magician. These guys way better at this than me. These guys are able to do things, and the scale of the attack, that is the motivation that they have. So your prize, the thing that you hold dear within your company, be it money, intellectual property, business process, whatever proprietary business processes that you have, those things that you hold dear is what they are trying to get at. So their motivation is only bounded by their ability to try to capture that from you. And I said at the start, they don't work individually, they organize themselves into groups. So you have things like ransomware groups. Ransomware is being perpetrated by a group of bad actors. It's an ecosystem. It's a business ecosystem. Just as you have economies of scale in the everyday world, these guys have classed themselves into areas of specialization. So if I am a bad actor and I want to get a foothold into a company, I talk to this guy here. He is able to get me a foothold into the company. If I want to have a call center to respond to one of their potential, what they are claiming is a support call, I have another guy who has that support call. So imagine this. The bad actors are creating ecosystems. What are the good actors doing? Do we truly have public-private partnership in Trinidad and Tobago when it comes to cybersecurity? We've heard some great plans about what TAT is doing, and they intend to work with the CERT. But I would encourage you to partner with the private sector as well. Partner with some of the smaller private sector entities as well, because we have certain expertise that we could lend to this type of situation. So the attacker's motivation is bounded by what they are trying to get from you. And that could potentially be limitless. They could have the ability to really try to bring a group together that could target you in particular. How many people think that ransomware attacks are by the way and not targeted? Show of hands. Are ransomware attacks targeted at entities? So one of the attacks we had maybe a couple of years ago was perpetrated by a group known as RansomX. And they have a particular way they carry out attacks such that they leave the identity of the victim in some of the files that they use. That is, let's call it a signature that they leave behind. So for RansomX to hit an entity in Trinidad and Tobago or the wider Caribbean is not by chance. These are targeted attacks. Your institution is potentially being targeted right now. What are the limitations? They have to overcome cost. So if I want to carry out a deepfake attack, or if I want to do a deepfake demo, I go on the internet and I buy a cheap, low-end gaming machine just for illustrative purposes to come and demo to this great audience here at CANTO. It may not be splashy, it may not be as sophisticated as some of the types of hardware that these guys could deploy, but I could get the job done just for demonstration purposes. So what you're going to see, understand that an attacker can do it 1,000 times better. And it all is bounded by their motivation to get something from you. So the higher the price, the more cost they will incur to get that prize from you. And it speaks to effort as well. What is the effort they are willing to put into this attack? How vast do they need to go to try to target this attack on you? Which other bad actors they need to pull into from this ecosystem? And they are readily available actors. These guys know each other. They work with each other as groups, and they pull little pieces from each other to orchestrate an attack. Economies of scale, everybody specializing in something else, and they are orchestrating an attack. So this is the effort part of it. And for them, it's very easy because the players are known, they're known amongst themselves, they know what their capabilities are, and they form themselves into loose amalgams or even groups, well-known groups, and carry out these attacks. And what does this speak to? This speaks to scale. How do we scale an attack from a demonstration I'm going to do here now to an actual attack where I'm trying to convince someone that I am a real person that you need to have business with? Let's form a supplier relationship, wire me these funds. I am a real person you're dealing business with. Click on this link, which will get me some piece of valuable information from you that I could use further within an attack. That's the scale part of it. So as I alluded to across there, I have an intern with us, university student, third-year engineering student, and he is, clearly he's a Bollywood star. You're not seeing him as yet. But we're going to turn him into a kung fu fighting machine. I don't want to use the name of the filter we're going to use, because IP and whatever, but you'll see a big difference. So if you could go ahead and show them what that deepfakes looks like. So you're seeing his normal face here. So as you can see, his features have clearly changed. He's moved from South Asian to, Japanese or Chinese or more fully Asian. You see? Kung fu fighting. But what do you do when this type of thing is perpetrated on you? How do you detect this? You sit down on a Zoom call and this man come on, I am a new supplier, I'm doing business with you. I want you to send me this money. I want you to click on this link. I want you to send me this compromising piece of information. What do you do? How do you detect this? This is coming to you on a live Zoom call because the other machine we have there, you'll see it. This is being detected now over a Google Meet link. So this is, one machine is doing the deepfake, and the other machine is receiving that Google Meet call. And you see the X5 detector there is picking up the deepfake. It is giving you all that reading at the bottom there, fake, 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 fake. It is focusing on the face, and it is able to give you these indicators that this is not a real person you're dealing with. So next time you're on a conference call, do you want this type of assurance? Yes. Right, very good. So it just goes to show there are attacks out there that we really need to get a grip on and put measures in place, technical controls if necessary, to make sure your business is not falling victim to these attacks. And this brings me to the concept of synthetic identities. At Pinnacle, we worked with the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank on the release of innovative central bank digital currency product. And at that point in time in the Eastern Caribbean, nobody else was doing online remote onboarding. So remote onboarding of a person into a platform now realize that you do not go to a physical location to submit your identity proofs and your 10,000 utility bill and all these type of things. You do all of this remotely. And to do this remotely, you employ a certain type of identity verification system. Now, why is this important? In Trinidad and Tobago, we've announced that we're going eKYC, where persons' identities are going to be verified on a platform, and then you can use that identity now to access other services. I want to let you know that, as you can see here, we've moved from a state of identity fraud to now the concept of synthetic identities. A synthetic identity utilizes information from various sources. So I can try to pretend to be someone else, and I can submit my real driver's license, and I could utilize some piece of information that is fictitious. And I could try to create an identity that combines the real element of the identity proof plus that fake information, and I get a synthetic identity. Again, this is not science fiction. This thing is taking place right now. The industry has moved from identity theft, protecting from identity theft, to protecting from synthetic identities. Deepfakes play a part in this, because how remote onboarding works right now is that you submit your identity proof to the platform, the third-party provider will verify that. You submit a selfie to the platform, and it will verify that you're doing a liveness check that that face that they received is real. The quality of that liveness check is important, because if it's just twitching, slight little twitching and eye movement and those type of things, those things can be faked. So to augment that process of generating, of identity, proving the identity of the person that you're onboarding remotely, you really need an identity system that has deepfake protection in it. And again, this is important because Trinidad is going down the route of eKYC. So very relevant, and I know that one of the telecom providers is involved. Some of the government, of course, may be involved in this. Payments area may be involved. But it just goes to show that the threats are out there, the threats are real, and you need to protect yourself, protect your systems. Thank you.
Well, let me tell you, very important conversation, and we saw in real time the deception on what could take place via the World Wide Web. And it's a very timely conversation. Of course, we want to say a sincere thanks to Shiva from Panaka Consulting. And of course, a chance again to do that deep dive. Feel free. Of course, I'm sure when it's all said and done, we could, I know people will pull your square to definitely get some more information when we have come to the conclusion of the CANTO Connect 2026. Again, very important. I would have received some notes, actually, concerning that particular talking point. And again, that live demo, a chance to see in real time how the deep fakes can be detected and what's required to prevent that sort of action from bad actors. Our final presentation on this Monday afternoon, we get into the conversation regarding resilience by design, how toxic leaders short-circuit digital transformation. And to take us through that conversation, we welcome the Managing Director of the Development Consulting Center Limited. Let's give a warm welcome to our final speaker this afternoon, Richard Solomon. Richard, the floor is yours. Okay, so we're going to stand by for Richard. But back to that deepfake scenario, right? The reality is, what we see, especially with AI, and I think we got an eye, lots of us got an eye, and we kind of could figure it out, but I sometimes really feel it for some of our more senior customers, like the moms and the dads and the grannies. I mean, my mom actually would be sending me stuff, hey, Jay, look at this, and I have to say, nah, mom, that's AI. You know, and a lot of people, they really can't figure it out, they don't know. So if any reason an image of me is on your phone with a high top, you know with a side part and a fade, it's happening. That's not the real deal. Yeah, so no, we have to really, especially, I mean, honestly, we have to talk to some of our more senior statesmen and senior stateswomen in our family, uncles, aunties, granny, grandpas, because some of them really, they don't know the difference between what's real from what's not. All right? So again, great conversation, and we get ready for the final installment. So again, let me just remind you, as we get into the final conversation. We will break for lunch, and more or less that's it for the formal part. We get a chance, obviously, to network, to see what's happening with our exhibitors outside. And then we come back at 6:30, especially for those here for the very first time. Our friend earlier on from Huawei, our friend from Colombia. Any other first timers? Just a show of hands. Just a show of hands. Anybody here for the very first time? We say welcome, welcome, welcome. Make sure and stick around for later. You're going to have a real good time. You get a little taste of the carnival flavor. So, with no delay, I think we are ready for our final speaker. He's being mic'd up and putting himself in a gear for this final presentation. I think we did really good on time. It's now 12:44. This presentation will take us, of course, as mentioned, to lunch. And after that, more or less a conclusion to the formal part of today's session. Again, resilience by design, how toxic leaders short-circuit digital transformation. Let's make some way and, of course, give a warm Port of Spain ballroom welcome to Richard Solomon, who will take us through it. Richard, the floor is yours.
Good morning, afternoon. Oh, it's afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Are you there? Are you hungry? No. I am all that stands between you and lunch. I promise I'll make this time go by quickly. I want to talk with you for a short period of time about this issue of toxic leadership. Is that a problem in the Caribbean region? Obviously, it's not something that you would want to say yes very loudly to. It's a setup question, I know. But some people said yes, and I'm saying yes from my vantage point. So let me tell you a little bit about our organization. We're an organization development consulting firm. Alaron is in green. He just joined the firm, and he's down on the back. Oh, there's Alaron. Give him a round of applause. Hey, Alaron. Good. We work with organizations around the region, and now we've worked with organizations actually in 45 countries, working on this human side of organizations, hence my presentation. Really want to focus on why leadership, and more importantly, or more specifically, toxic leadership is actually a risk factor for what we're trying to do across the Caribbean region. Some of the organizations we've worked with, and in the best interest of time, I'm going to just jump on quickly to where we need to be. Okay. So quickly, context. We'll talk a little bit about transition, and when I talk about transition, I'm talking about transitioning to a gigabit society and this issue of competitiveness and global competitiveness, and we do struggle as a region with that. That takes us into toxic leadership, and then naturally, did you get the picture? Then naturally to fixing this issue of toxic leadership, in quotes. And really that is the building of resilience, and then a short 1.5 minute survey. All right, let's go. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this part because we know it. We're in Industry 5.0. We're trying to create this human-machine cooperation, this digital system hand-holding. AI is all the boom, AI is all the rage. People are saying maybe there's an AI bubble, and of course what is going to follow that, obviously, is where are we going to power all these data centers? And that's the next big thing, obviously, because, I always say, Wi-Fi is kind of at the base of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and then right below that, you have to plug it in somewhere, so electricity sits there. The spend on IT has continued to grow, and for this audience, this is not a big deal. You know this, and if we look at what Gaten has said about us, or said about the spend, this is how we've kind of divided the spend in 2025. All right? This is all contextual. Let's quickly talk about transition. So you know this. We've got this gap of about $9 to $13 billion in terms of what the Caribbean needs to create a gigabit society. Yeah? This gap, organizations and countries obviously are going to try as best as they can to make the investments. And of course, the Caribbean is coming from behind. post-colonial societies are generally always coming from behind, trying to catch up. So this is going to be, a lot of money is going to be poured in trying to create this society, this gigabit society. On the infrastructural side, if you look at Strand's research, you will see a lot of what Strand talks about is on the infrastructural side, obviously. Now, if we take that and hold on to that and think about this whole issue of competitiveness, because the bet that we're making is if we drive this gigabit society, if we create that, then it's going to help our nations to become more competitive. How is a nation, or what drives competitiveness for a nation? Well, it's three things according to Porter. One, it's the natural endowments. We're here in Trinidad, Port of Spain, and we've got good weather. We sit in a nice location. The hurricanes don't come this far south. We've got some gas and oil. So those are natural endowments. We didn't do anything to get those. They just exist for us. One. Secondly, it's the macro environment. The macro environment does not create competitiveness, but without it, you can't really be competitive. So think rule of law, fiscal policies, strong government, peaceful transfer of government from one to the other. We don't shoot each other in the streets, etc., because governments are turning over. We're in election season in the Caribbean, obviously. Yeah? So there is that, human development and so on. And then on the micro level, firms need to be competitive. So firms, people need to be competitive, supplier demand and behavior, all of that drives it. So the bet we are making with this gigabit society, no one told me, but this is obviously the bet, that as we drive up connectivity, all of these would work better. We'll exploit our resources better, our natural resources. We will be able to have a stronger environment both on the macro and the micro side. That makes sense, makes us more competitive globally. All right? Now, obviously, as we look around the globe, we see data is the thing. Connectivity and data is the new thing. It's no longer, well, I shouldn't say it's no longer oil because people are still fighting for that. We'll leave that for another discussion. But let's go to this formula. Keep myself out of trouble. So, and is it a little off? Digital transformation, DT on the left, and Louis Silva talks about this, is equal to IT, which is individual transformation, followed by BT, which is business transformation, and then by the last one, technological transformation. So basically what Silva is saying here is if you want digital transformation, these other three must also transform. I want you to keep this formula in mind, this DT, IT, BT, TT. Keep that in mind, because that'll come up a little bit later. Louis Silva is basically saying that if we want to transform an organization, a country digitally, then let's take the first one. Individuals must transform, obviously. Now, the Caribbean sits in the middle of the pack when it comes to human capital development. I didn't put the slide up here because time. But we still don't spend enough, focus enough on developing our people. Someone earlier talked about, during the panel, they were talking about people leaving to go to other places, some of our brightest. And I listened to the panelists talk about it being our fault. Quickly, from a socio-historical perspective, it's not totally our fault. See, if you have a post-colonial society, what happens is colonizers only colonize for themselves. They don't colonize for you. So they come in, they take resources, and they go build their own nations. This is just a truth. I don't express an opinion on the matter. They go build their own nations. They get richer, you get poorer, and you are stuck behind. And so the best and the brightest go, I can't take this place. It's not growing fast enough. Oh, I can do so much more. I saw a colleague of mine posting and saying, this place, country inserted, is too small for me. And many of us, the brightest of us, we've said these things. And so they go to find what? Greener pastures. That's part of our reality. So this individual transformation now speaks to those of us who have decided to make the Caribbean our home. Pause. I'm going to say that again. Those of us who have decided to make the Caribbean our home. Because many of us who live in the Caribbean could live elsewhere. Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Why not? I mean, we're here. We're building this place, so obviously we can't, but we've decided to make the Caribbean our home, and we're saying that more of us need to individually transform. And we need to hold on to this formula. I'm coming back to it. Now, I'm going to layer something else in. This is a convenient sample of 29 regional utility CEOs, and I asked them about their satisfaction with leadership skills in their organization. And if you look, you will see only the green, which is 7%, and the blue, which is 28%, so that's 35%, said they were very satisfied or satisfied. All of the others were either slightly or even worse in terms of the leadership skills below them. Keep that in mind. I know I'm asking you to hold on to things. This as well. This one is even worse. Because those very leaders, I asked them, are you satisfied with the systems to develop leaders in your organization? Look how the numbers shrink. Only 20% said, yes, I'm strongly, or I agree. The rest was slightly all the way down, which indicates high levels of dissatisfaction or disagreement with the effectiveness of the systems in their organizations to produce leaders. Let me connect a couple of things for you. I'm saying that we produce competitiveness, first of all, at the national endowment level. That's what we have under the ground. Then at the macro level. Then at the individual level. But people exploit all of those, create all of those, run all of those. And if we're not developing our people fast enough at a national level, because we're not. And if these leaders are saying they are not, then you can see we have some real problems. So let's talk about toxic leadership. Let's start with a definition, easy one. A process where through consistent destructive behavior and dysfunctional personal traits, these leaders inflict serious, enduring, a poisonous effect on their followers. Followers could be organizations, families, communities, and of course, yes, nations, whole nations. And for me, there's toxicity amongst all of us, different levels of toxicity. And some of us can manage and some can't. Let's break this apart a little bit more. So here are some characteristics that you will find amongst toxic leaders. Intimidation, fear, very self-centered, bullying. They're manipulators. That's a word you will see coming up over and over and over. Superiority complex. They don't like to be held accountable. They throw people under the bus. Number 10 is always there. They micromanage and they disempower. And if you prefer one of these word clouds, then it's the same thing in word cloud format. These are some of the major characteristics you would find among toxic leaders. I am talking about digital transformation. Just stay with me, all right? Just stay with me. We're getting there. Now, the toxic triangle, there are 3 levels to the toxic triangle. One is the internal driver. So that's the stuff that the leaders have within them. Start with the dark triad. So you have narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy. Those are real for humans, and many of your leaders in organizations have these in some level or the other. Many of us in this room have these in some level or the other. It's real for humans. However, not all can manage well. Yeah, so you have the dark triad, you have insecurity that very often masquerades as confidence, you have childhood and professional traumas that many people carry with them, and then, of course, poor emotional regulation, or EQ as we like to call it. And what does this have to do with creating a gigabit society? Stay with me. In addition, for this to work, meaning for toxic leaders to do their worst, they need a couple things from the organization. One, they need organizational enablers. People who enable their behavior, promote them beyond the point that they should be promoted. That's a common problem. There are leaders who are promoted to a place they should never be. No, it's not that they're not bright, smart, all that is good. They just do not have the self-ability, the self-leadership begin with, and then the people leadership skills in order to do a good job at that level. So you have organizational enablers, and then you have susceptible followers. So these are your conformers. We will go along to get along for the security's sake, and then you have the colluders. Those who say, well, I will get something out of this as well, so I am going to be part of it. Yeah? So these 3, you will see them over and over as I run through a few examples in about 5 minutes. Now, one of the questions you would ask yourself is, well, why do leaders become toxic? There are lots of ways we could explain this. I just thought that it would be very interesting to look at how the environment causes us to behave differently. It changes our genetic, not base genetic structure, but it changes our genetics. Anyone has heard the term epigenetics? Epi is outside of or on top of. So we all have, we've mapped the human genome. Yeah? And pretty much we can tell who were your parents once we have it in the database. We can tell where you came from, etc. That remains in place. However, epigenetics focuses on changes in gene expression, how genes change because of the environment. In other words, your genetic, not underlying structure, but overstructure or outside structure can express differently and cause you to behave differently depending on your environment. There's a lot of research on this. Not going to spend any set of time on it. It's just simply to say a few things here. For example, we pass this on, heritability from parent to offspring. So if you look at Jewish Holocaust survivors, you have, and their offspring, you have gene alterations. 9/11 mothers pass to their babies lower cortisol levels. And of course, Africans in the diaspora are noted to be some of the sickest people in the world as a group. And this is because of the stress profile that they've gone through for slavery. Why am I talking about all of this when we're talking about leadership? Stay with me, right? Because here's the thing, if you subject people to trauma, generationally it alters how they behave. And typically when people get into therapy, where do they go? Back to childhood to see what happened there. What did you experience that causes you to behave in these kinds of ways? We can spend an entire conference on just this, but this is enough for our purposes. So, what is the impact on organizations when you have this toxic leadership? There's a bunch of things. Reduce engagement, that's an easy one. Our productivity falls. Of course, people leave the organization, and then of course you have the replacement cost to fight with. Yeah, some of the brightest and the best go, I am not doing this. You've heard that? Oh, there's no way I am doing this, because the brightest and the best have options. So they go find other people, other places to work. And then of course, there's all the mental stress. There's all the bad decisions in the organizations because cronyism and nepotism rules. So people are doing things for the wrong reasons, and as a result, the organization suffers. I don't think there is any debate as to the negative impact of toxic leaders in organizations. Here are some examples. You should know all of these. Enron, remember them? You can track it back. CEO incentivized lying and cheating. He actually said greed is good. It was a survival of the fittest environment. Any dissent, you always find this, suppressed. Yeah? So people lost jobs. There's a $3.2 billion in pensions were lost. The overall loss was over $100 billion. And when you look at it from the perspective of toxicity, you will see hubris, deception, and narcissism rank and running through that organization in that time. This one was recent, Theranos. CEO led by fear and intimidation, another one that you see all the time, fear and intimidation, against suppression of dissent. There were over 1 million faulty test results to patients. Of course, and that by extension can endanger people's lives. And then, of course, the market value that was wiped out as a result. Despotic, low EQ, deception, narcissism. VW, remember? You remember this? Dieselgate? Yeah? Same thing. Authoritarian pressure, and as a result, culture affairs, centralized control. You always find this. I have the power. It's one of those things that you find with toxic leaders. The power is mine. So we don't want too many people to be empowered. Yeah? Massive recall, we don't know what the environmental damage was. Narcissism, Machiavellianism. This one was classic. Probably one of the classic ones for our environment. And I can't do this without talking about Boeing. This was probably one of the worst because 346 people died as a result. Yeah? Deception, ethical failures, etc. And it's the same thing being repeated over and over and over. None of these are telecom organizations, of course, but I can't leave you out. So, of course, some of you would know this one. T-Mobile. some people's hearts. We're like, oh, is it my organization he's going to talk about? I felt that, like, is it no, not your organization. And I can't say it if it's not public. If it's public, I can say it, but if it's not public, I can't say it. Yeah. So T-Mobile, similar, there was this huge data leak and so on. Let's come to the Caribbean, though. We do have an example in the Caribbean that is public that I'm free to speak of because it got to the courts and all of the documents are public. Some of you will know this one. I don't know if you do. But in this case, we found, because I conducted some of the investigations there, hostile climate, pressures, fear. There was a massive ransomware attack. And as a result, the organization lost millions in revenue. For months, they couldn't bill anyone. Nobody knows who it is. Well, outages, so constant crisis of outages. This one, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy was very evident. Who it is? This is GB in St. Martin. And if you do a simple search, the court documents are online. Everything is online because it's in the courts. And yeah, they ended up in a very, very difficult situation. Now, for those of you who are uncomfortable, because I can feel it, that we are talking about this, we have to confront this because this is a risk factor for the spend, the multi-billion-dollar spend that many of the organizations and countries are prepared to make. Some of that money will be lost, or the value will take a very long time to produce what it should because we are protecting some sacred cows, because we are covering up for some of our leaders, for some people who should not be in leadership. Now remember this formula, DT is equal to IT multiplied by. I'm now going to insert in here, so it's the same thing, but I'm going to insert a fourth element and say toxic leadership becomes a multiplier in this formula. I'm pulling toxic leadership out of the individual transformation, and I'm saying if toxic leadership, if you have that at a high level, making it 0, then the entire formula is rendered moot. It's not literally mathematical. We get that. But you understand that this cripples your organization. Some of your best people, they can't do their best work because they are struggling on a daily basis for survival, dealing with some of our leaders in our organization. So how do we repair this? Yeah, still on time. So, one of the best ways is to prevent it in the first place. That would be ideal if you could prevent this. Oversight, accountability. You want to have proper separation of powers. Those values that people put on plaques, they need to be operationalized in the organization. They need to be the lenses through which you measure performance, through which you hire people, through which you decide whether or not this leader is right for the organization. Now you might be saying, well, yeah, boy, Richard, we mightn't get the perfect hire. I get that. Because there are no perfect hires. However, what you don't want to do is close your eyes to all of this other, what some people call soft stuff. That's the hard stuff. Because when you program those machines to behave a particular way, they'll behave a particular way. People, oh, that's a totally different story. So you have this risk factor. Some of the things you want to do, have an open communication, multi-level training at all leadership levels. There's adequate oversight and feedback. One CEO for a regional financial organization contacted me, and we did these conversations around his organization, him directly with his people, because he was tired of filtered information. You could be the CEO and not know what's going on in your organization. You know what you read, you can see what the numbers say, but there are other things happening. You want to have proper feedback systems. And then whistleblower policies. How many organizations here have a whistleblower policy? Can I see your hands? Not nearly enough. Only a few. People should be able to say there's some stuff going on in the corner here and not be afraid that they will end up in a river, either literally or figuratively. And some of you will get that reference. You see, the damage, if we don't deal with these things early, can be catastrophic. So, how do we repair? Well, you want independent boards, and I know that's difficult when you have political appointees. I always urge politicians, Sure, I get it. You've got to appoint people who support you, and I get all that stuff. But in that group, try and find some people who at least know what they're doing. That's important. I get it. You want to find people that support you. I get that. But you also want people who are competent, who can say no. You know, who can stand and say, this is not a good idea, this doesn't make sense, etc. Talked about the values already. The silence breakers, you want to empower them. You want to decentralize power. If you concentrate too much power into one person's hands, you end up in lots of trouble. Because then they can cover things. Be careful of toxic performance systems. There are some performance systems that go, okay, you're doing great, but relative to somebody who's doing greater, you're not doing so great, so we're going to get rid of you. And there are organizations that practice that. So you're always racing. You have people who are always racing to not be the ones at the end, because devil take the hindmost, albeit they are still performing well and they're hitting their targets. Use external experts to investigate, because sometimes they will not tell you within the organization. And then hire leaders not just for their technical competence. Yes, we need that, but also for transparency and empathy and all that other good stuff. Management is the scientific art of getting work done through people. What do? Get work done through people. How? Through people. People is your stock in trade if you're a leader. And if you can't manage people, then you're not doing your job. And the higher up the organization you go, the more real that becomes. Then redefine who the hero is. The hero doesn't have to be the smartest, the loudest, the highest paid. That's a problem sometimes. For a leader, that should be the most empowering. So a few things to harden the leadership architecture. You want systemic redundancy. You need a succession pipeline. We should have leaders being developed behind. Next level, next level, next level. Decentralized decision making. I've said this over and over. Balance the leadership load. Don't let your leaders redline for too long. Just like you won't let a server redline forever. That's crazy. Your leaders can only run so much and then they need to power down. So do that. Let's go again. The human stack. You want micro empowerment, not micro control. Some of the leadership habits, you're going to have give leaders space, and many leaders, I should ask the question, how many of you in leadership roles here, raised by a raise of hands, can say that you have time, probably twice a week, to reflect on what's happening within your organization, your department, your people. You have time. Let me see how many hands can say they have the time. Very few hands. So this is a common problem. Very few hands. There's no space to do that work. So you want to have the so-called balcony thinking, to be able to reflect and sort of stand over the organization and say, let me see how is John doing, how is Richard doing, how do we improve this, what coaching does he need? Build psychological safety as a risk bridge. This is often called soft skills, but it's not that soft at all. It's pretty hard if you ask me. Teams should feel comfortable to come and say, this is messy, it's not working. I know we wanted to use this particular approach, but it's not giving us the outcome. And not feel like they are going to be crucified as a result of just bringing bad news. Create a high signal leadership. So people need to be clear. What are the outcomes? Who has the decision-making authority? Processes need to be documented. This is a problem. I'm seeing this over and over in organizations. Just worked at an organization in the Bahamas. The CEO says, okay, here's the problem we're having. In this department, you have people doing this one thing 4 different ways. And that is replicated across my organization. They're getting the same result. But each way creates different risks, sometimes legal risk, financial risk, and each way has different resource requirements. We need to find the most optimal way and the least risky way and document it and then train the people that are coming in to do it that way. Information access. Also, proximity bias. Your remote teams, make sure they are brought in. They are read into all of this. Debug cultural signal loss. Let's look for what's causing this and not try to assign blame. Now you might say, Richard, if there's a failure point here, we need to deal with them. I agree with you. That's not about blame. That is about saying, hey, this person has a weakness in this area, knowledge, ability, skill, and as a result, we need to fix that. Yeah? Honesty. What's really going on? Get below the reports. recalibration? Are we pointing in the same direction? Do leaders have measurable outcomes that they're meant to produce where their people are concerned? That you can measure. By the way, you can measure all things. You just have to find a way to operationalize them. Everything, human behavior can in fact be measured. This is no longer some esoteric thing that we can measure. So do your leaders know what are the measurable goals they're shooting for? Develop leadership roadmaps, have a health dashboard so they will know, here's where I am in terms of empowerment, here is where I am in terms of my coaching hours with my people, etc. So I put together this little quote, if you want. Digital transformation for the Caribbean is not optimal. It is a pathway to, a pathway to global competitiveness. It demands that we move beyond toxic leadership that hoards power. It demands, I'm going to add, it demands that we move beyond the chief. You know, the chief knows everything, and the chief is the one who has to make all the decisions, that micromanages and stifles potential. And therefore, the real legacy that leaders will leave will not be what they build, but it will be about who they empower. Remember, you don't stay here forever. You're not going to run the thing forever. Actually, even if you are, which you can't, you want people behind you, learning, being more empowered, making mistakes, messing up sometimes, because that's part of the process. Think of it like the pilot in charge. You don't see the pilot at cruising altitude walking back into the cabin and say, did you get coffee? Because there are people who are doing that. It would be weird, but some leaders, that's how they operate. All right, quickly, folks, there's a quick survey I'd like you to take. If you could just point your phone to this will take you a minute and a half, if that, and my time is up. So just quickly give me your responses to this. I gather information of all kinds about Caribbean challenges as we work with organizations around the region. And I want to encourage you that for those of you who, as I spoke about some of these issues around toxic leadership, and you can say, yeah, I can see that in my organization. If you're in a position to do something about it, don't just kind of cover it. You know, if you sit in a role where you can begin to question, where you can begin to deal with some of this, then I'm going to encourage you to do so. So I'm going to give you a minute or two to respond to that before I turn over this. I should stay here? Keep this. You want to ask me a question? Okay, come, you take this mic, and let's see what we could talk about.
Your piece is so engaging. I just wanted to ask before we wrap things up officially. I see leadership as the ability to create other leaders. How do we do that in the environment, a very competitive environment? A leader creating other leaders.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we see the baton is not easily passed on here in the Caribbean when it comes to leadership.
Yeah. So when you say in a competitive environment, I immediately think we've got competition out there, they're running after us, and we don't have time to slow down. Here's the problem with that. You can't be so busy driving that you can't pause to get gas. It is not possible that the organization will continue in the long term if we don't develop the people that are coming behind. So it's not a matter of how, it is a matter of we must. Now, I remember hearing Jeff Bezos talk about this get rich slowly thinking. You know, most organizations want the results now. Well, you don't grow humans that way. I'm sorry. This is not a get rich quick kind of a thing. It's something that you have to do over the long haul. And so the best leaders, to answer the question directly, the best leaders, here's what they do. Yes, I'm going to create other leaders. Yes, we've got some competitive needs and we need to run really fast. And I know I'm going to give them a chance and they're going to make mistakes and we're going to give them opportunities. And when they do, we're going to use those as teachable moments. Every person in here, to wrap it up, every person in here, someone said to you at some point in time, you are the person for the job. And you went, me? Every person in here. And if you didn't do that, it was me. You know, somebody said that. Somebody gave you an opportunity to try and learn and to grow. The organization did not fail as a result, usually. And so that's what we must do.
Thanks, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Richard, must say, really, really impactful conversation there. Of course, we thank Shiva Kirk from earlier, Fabio, who was here for the very first time. We had, of course, discussions there with our panel. Of course, Lee conducted one. We had Mark conducting another panel. Ria from iGov shared with us some perspective, and also Brad and indeed Inga. So it was indeed a very impactful session today, Monday. We're getting ready for lunch. Yes, happy to announce that. And by all means, we continue with the networking. The expo is happening outside, so let's stick around, get to know each other. And by all means, the formal invitation is in place for 6:30 downstairs waterfront for our network and mixer compliments Liberty Caribbean. Again, all the best, guys, and see you tomorrow for more right here at CANTO Connect, our AGM 2026. Thank you, guys. Yes, ma'am.